Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the Last Epoch Dev Stream. As always, I'm your host, Mike. But I have a special guest with me today. Please welcome to the studio, everybody. This is our lore master, Kyle. Pew, pew, pew. Kyle, you're muted. You're still muted. We can't hear you at all. Hey, this is Kyle. Kyle is our... There he is.
Here, let me just deafen you on Discord real quick.
Oh, here, I'll mute myself on Discord. There we go. How's that?
Perfect.
You're hearing double, weren't you? Alright, here we go. This is Kyle. He is our lore master. He's one of the OG people here. We've been together for
Oh, yes, I was.
many years. Yeah, having tons of fun. Oh, here, you should actually mute the stream so you can hear me through Discord because the stream has a delay. If that works.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah, okay, cool.
I've muted the stream now.
This is with
I don't stream that often.
This is tons of practice. We do this all the time. We're old pros at this, no big deal. So I'm just gonna keep playing around with my bow mage build that we had going last week. While Kyle here is going to answer lore questions that any of you may have. I know there's a few people that might be a little bit reasonably excited. And I hope we get some good answers in here. I do just want to preface this a little bit by saying there are some things that we won't be able to answer, unfortunately, as always. And I hope you all understand that there's certain things we got to keep a little bit on the DL. A little bit of housekeeping before we get into this as well. We have a new charity stream this week. Pause with a Cause. Pew, pew, pew. They create custom assistance dogs for people with disabilities. So it's pretty cool. And they'll be here all month. So yeah, with that, Kyle, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
We did get a few questions before we started so we have a few things like prepped up, but if anyone has any questions, lore questions specifically, please feel free to submit those for Kyle to answer while we go on the stream. If you have other questions that are not lore related questions, totally fine to ask those too. It's not exclusive, but yeah, it's just the main focus and theme for today. So yeah, you got a question right here, Kyle. Do you have a favorite? I don't know if can you see the chat directly? Do you have the chat open?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
if you see a question, just go for it.
Okay, so NerdyJoe314 says, Kyle, do you have a favorite implementation of time travel mechanics, even if it's not the one used in LE? Actually, there is one that I like a lot. It's actually from that old webcomic Homestuck. I like the idea of doomed timelines from that story quite a bit, and just complicated time loops that like cause themselves to happen. I've always been a fan of the kind of puzzle-like kind of time mechanics in those kind of stories, and I find the idea of just doomed timelines really fascinating from that. So I would say that'd be my favorite.
I'm gonna piggyback and say Bill and Ted.
That's a good one too, absolutely.
Yeah, if you do have a question you'd like us to answer, put at Last Epoch Game in the question, or if you want to just ask it directly to Kyle, you can tag him too. I don't know what he is in chat. Kyle, if you want to just type in chat briefly so people can just see what you are.
Yeah, I forget what my Twitch name is.
And then we'll be able to see it. As for the usual questions, so when will the full game be released? When it's ready. Yeah, so KQ Kyle is the in-game. If you want to tag him directly, feel free to. You can do either one of us.
Yeah. And next question is from Quiet For Me. It is, what is the canon timeline you will follow, or will you keep it a mystery? I will say, in regards to what canon timeline means is really determined by what all needs to happen to have the certain endpoint that certain forces, need to happen. So the campaign timeline would be, as it were, the canon timeline, but the alternate timelines do exist in the setting. The alternate timelines are canonical, though there is a canon timeline which the campaign story sort of represents, and it's canon in an actual in-universe sense. Like, you gotta twist the word canon a little bit.
Yeah.
Like there is a
prime line.
Yeah, prime timeline is I think a better way to kind of get that idea across in far as like how the setting itself would perceive it.
Sweet. Multiplayer when it's ready. Multiplayer we are working on right now. We do have testing going for it. We recently finished up our community tester test, and we have been working on a new build for that, and we should be moving along. Program's going great. There's no major stumbling blocks since we've started the CT timeline, CT testing, so that's good news there, but we don't have a date yet for it, sorry. Will I ever get more scroll items? Maybe.
Right, I got another lore question from Perry the Pig. What's with the giant black hole at the end of time? Will we ever learn more about that, or is it just there to be pretty? And actually, so that black hole, it just adds a little bit more personality to the area, a little more ambience. And also I got an unrelated question to ask in response. Where is Orbis anyways? Is there actually a location where he physically is? Who knows? Who knows? Completely unrelated question in response to that one.
Another general question here. When will they add multiplayer? When it's ready. We don't have any details on it yet. Will we ever get more scroll items? Maybe. It's a lot of similar questions there. Will I need to create a new character to play multiplayer when it launches? Yes. Or can I play the ones that I have today? No. The ones you have now are stored offline on your computer, and we will not be transitioning them to our servers. Partially from a fresh start perspective, partially from a securities perspective. Yeah. So the offline characters will remain offline. You will be able to continue playing them offline as you are now, but they will not transition to the online environment.
Okay, I've got another question from Tur3K. Does that mean we'll go into the black hole? I don't know if we'll go into the black hole. That might be important. It might not. I don't know where Orbis is. Who knows? I don't know where we'll go to find him. Anyways, we have another question from Quiet For Me. How did necrotic magics come to exist? We know it was more like a science magic compared to other magics like natural elemental. Why can't void and necrotic magics coexist in the same spell? So, there are a few sort of layers to that question. I will say that necromantic magics have existed for a long time. It really just kind of what necromantic magic really kind of is any kind of magic that deals with souls or reanimation or soul manipulation. If you're speaking more specifically about the Immortal Empire style of necrotic magic, that came into the forefront pretty early into the Immortal, or pretty early in the Imperial era, after humanity kind of got out from under the gods and started doing their own thing. And once the Immortal Emperor kind of rose to power, he started out as a mortal, human. And once they had just more resources at their hands, no gods to kind of, guide them or tell them what to do, they started experimenting with these kind of more forbidden magics more and more, and kind of sort of advancing it into this more sort of science-like shape. So that's kind of the short version of that. Is necrotic magic has existed for a long time, but it's been more of a kind of forbidden, kind of hedge magic, kind of secret kind of thing, and it's really once the Immortal Empire really started to embrace it and kind of fuel it with this kind of stolen divine magic they got from killing the gods, and without having the pushback from these divine influences, they're able to really kind of get the steam rolling on necrotic magic actually advancing, kind of turning into what you see in the Imperial era. And for the second part of that question about why can't void and necrotic magics coexist, there are a couple of examples of them kind of coexisting, but it's never in a very seamless, natural way. The two examples that come to mind immediately are the Emperor's remains at the end of the ruined Temple of Eterra, and Void Harren at the end of that Ruin of the Empire timeline, where Harren is now void corrupted. I would say both of those examples are kind of special cases because of the fact that, void magic and necrotic magic have a hard time coexisting due to the fact that they both sort of work off of the same, prey, almost the same sort of fuel almost. I've got a rent out version of this real quick. So it's hard to see really like seamless fusions of them, because void creatures and void like corrupted things, they aren't really alive in the same sense as normal life would be, so you can't really raise them into undeath. And conversely, a lot of the sort of soul and kind of vitality that the void corrupts is kind of frayed and damaged and, you know, not altogether there anymore in undeath. So they're kind of, if it's undead or if it's void, it's kind of has a lot of the stuff that undead or void would use already gone, essentially. So the cases where, you know, void and necrotic do interact are in special cases like the Emperor's Remains, that is more so like void masses puppeting the Emperor's corpse than anything else, rather than any kind of true fusion. And in Harren's case, Harren has a lot more of his kind of self still in there in that timeline, and that's how the void is able to corrupt him despite being undead. In that, like, and those are two definitely like exceptions to kind of like what you would normally see. If you like, in fact, in the Ruined Empire time, you see, you know, undead and void right next to each other, and they stay mostly kind of independent, fighting each other, largely due to the fact that the stuff that they would corrupt on each other is already corrupted, as it were. Not sure if that answered the question as well as you like, but that's about it. Okay, let me scroll up if there's more questions. Oh, thank you. Let me scroll up a bit, we got some more questions. Let's see here. Will there be a lore explanation for multiplayer from Perry the Pig? This is a concept we like threw around a bunch way back when, back pre-Kickstarter, when it was like 5 of us. I'm still a big fan of this sort of like almost meta-y concept where pretty much multiplayer other player characters are pretty much other travelers, aka, you know, the traveler from their own timelines. That does kind of fly in the face of the, you know, canon / prime timeline answer from before, but that's kind of easily kind of smoothed over by the idea that you individually are the traveler that's in the prime timeline, whereas the players you interact with in multiplayer are all from these secondary timelines. And thank you to, I think it was Perry the Pig again who said primary versus secondary earlier. No, that's Nerdy Joe 314. Yeah, Nerdy Joe 314, I do like that primary versus secondary terminology there. That's definitely helpful on this. So yeah, like, we threw around that idea quite a bit a long time ago about other players and multiplayer being other, you know, quote-unquote main characters in alternate timelines that aren't you, who is in the canon primary timeline. Let's see here. What's the next one we have? From Nerdy Joe 314, will you change the local save format to just how easy it is to craft items? Well, looking back at the history of Welrin and the Imperial era, I have no idea. Mike, what do you think?
I already answered this one in text. Yeah, so I was saying there is that obscuring that function for offline saves is not going to actually do anything to stop people from doing it. If someone wants to, they'll still do it. Just makes their life harder, so probably won't do anything. We might change some things a little bit, but if someone's gonna do that, someone will make a tool for it, and it won't be that hard to do anyways. So it's probably not worth their time and energy. We're just gonna make online awesome. It's a short answer. there was another question there while we're on the topic of not lore stuff. In the Monolith of Fate, when looking at the second quest of the Last Ruined timeline, where you have to defend Gaspar against waves of void monsters, it seems Gaspar is unkillable by monsters. Does it mean he's the most powerful entity currently? Maybe this is a lore question after all. Some things are there for mechanical purposes to make things function properly, and we all know how much we love defending Ashley and RE4, right?
And I'll say, lore-wise, the reason why Urza can't be damaged by the void monsters in that quest echo is because he is specially adept at portal and teleportation magic, and he just teleports all the damage coming in towards him away.
Nice. I like that. See, this is the thing as well, is I feel like I'm going to learn just as much as everyone else here today. Because I get to ask these questions, and I'm like, I have no idea.
But the real answer is because if he died, and, you know, we don't want to have you failed the quest because this NPC died, start over. That's just not fun.
Ever heard of the term plot armor?
Alright, we got another one from Quiet for Me. What is the power structure of the gods? Are Orbis and Eterra the pinnacle? Then Lagan, Herat, and Raya and Majasa the lesser gods? Where does the shade of Orbis fall under this power dynamic? I will say that the Eterra and Orbis in this sort of hierarchy, they are definitely above Lagan, Herat, Raya, and Majasa. And I would say more specifically, Lagan, Herat, Raya, and Majasa are directly underneath Eterra, whereas Orbis is sort of a, if you view like kind of a tree, kind of like branching out. Orbis would kind of branch out from the same kind of like tier as Eterra for sure, with Raya, Lagan, Majasa, and Herat both being directly under Terra, but not connected to Orbis, if that makes any sense. So family tree-wise, they are from under Eterra, but not under Orbis. But Orbis and Eterra are on their same tier. And the second part of that question, in regards to the Shade of Orbis, the Shade of Orbis is not. It's sort of its own kind of separate entity, but not really. The Shade of Orbis is essentially a reflection of Orbis, a sort of snapshot of his malice and torment during the time he was imprisoned, and being reflections of Orbis from this kind of very specific snapshot, Orbis can guide them in certain ways, but their kind of natural kind of nature of this kind of pain and torment kind of guides them to what they do as it is now. So Orbis can control the shades, but the shades are definitely under Orbis, but the shades are also these sort of reflections of him. So you could draw a parallel of the shades being just under Orbis in the same way that the Divine Era gods are just under Terra, but it's not exactly the same situation, as these are snapshots of Orbis rather than these more independent beings that the Divine Era gods are.
Should we do a little graph here? So we've got...
Sure. Alright, so pretty much we're only dealing with two tiers here. So we got a Terra and Orbis on one. Under Terra, we have the Divine Era gods. And under Orbis, we have the Shades, though the Shades are kind of the same entity as Orbis, but reflections of him. Whereas the Lagan and the others are more independent.
Kind of like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So in this structure, like Hera and the others, they are subservient to Terra, and if she was active in the Divine Era, they would be following her orders and taking her calls on things, but they have no such connection or obligation to Orbis.
Yeah. Despite
Orbis and Terra being on the same tier. Different departments, you could say.
You're not my supervisor!
Exactly.
Quick question, will be a class respec. If you're asking if you can change your mastery class, we don't plan for that to be an option at the moment, but anything could change. Just call the other players mercenaries and call it a day. yeah, we're adding mercenaries to the game. All the other players are your mercenaries, and you are everyone else's mercenary as well.
I still like the idea that from everyone's personal perspective, they're the hero of their own story, even though with you being the one actually controlling your screen, you're the hero of your actual story. And that's just splitting hairs either way.
Yeah, I love it.
We got another question from Iro Weird. Sorry if I mispronounced that name. Will we learn what happens with Mortitus after we remove the spear? And unrelated, will we get to see the Emperor origin story? I will say that the ramifications of Mortitus being essentially freed, or just not being held by the spear's presence anymore, that is not really going to be explored in the campaign currently. There are plans to kind of potentially use that as a hook for some future content. It might be a monolith thing, it might be something else down the road, but as it is, it's sort of a hook for later stuff. And anyways, as long as the Ruined Era happens, it's going to flow over and consume anything that Mortis might have been up to at that time, because he doesn't have enough time for that. So more of this right now is sort of a to-be-continued plot thread that we have at our disposal for later. And the other side of the question about the Emperor origin story, that will be addressed in one of the future campaign chapters. I'm not going to get into more detail of it than that, but that is, you will see, someone become the Immortal Emperor, or at least just begin their path on that by the end of the campaign.
No foreshadowing at all.
Okay, got another one from Random Name X.
Yeah,
okay,
you go. Also, just want to say before you welcome everyone from Lone Star and Cluffin stream. I forgot to say that when you joined, but thanks for coming. Hang out, lore stream.
Howdy.
Also, spoiler alert. Heads up. A little late.
I'm trying to keep all the answers I have more details to my chest.
Yeah.
Anyways.
I think we're assuming that everyone here doesn't care about having plot spoilers from that's already in the game.
Oh yeah, if it's like already in the campaign chapters, heads up, it's gonna be talked about, unfortunately. Like maybe one time we'll schedule like a spoiler-free lore stream. We can talk all about the title screen of the game. That was me. I apologize. Random Name X. Lore question. Please explain how this character fits into the lore Mike Primalist. It has been a long-running, just kind of inside joke in the company about Mike looking like the Primalist. I know at least one of the Primalist early models looked just like Mike, it was his face.
They used a picture of me to make it.
They did. Yeah, they did, didn't they? Yeah. I remember that now.
Yeah, it's not there anymore. It's a completely different model from scratch now.
Yeah, I'll say the lore explanation for that is a small team with not many art references.
No, I used to live in the woods. That's it. I used to have a wolf buddy. We hung out in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, got a question for Mike from Tur3K. You want to tackle that one?
I may have already
we already hit that earlier.
Yep.
Yeah, you already hit that earlier.
I'm sneaky.
You are sneaky. Okay, let's see here. We got one from a Wild Aussie. Is it in theory possible for a trace of the void to follow you through time and afflict other times? Or perhaps that just an idea for a future X-Pack or something? You kind of see it's less following and more so summoning, but that you do see a little bit of something like that with Apophis at the end of Chapter 9, where she summons in the void herself from the future to the Divine Era. So the void can be beckoned into other times. It's not completely locked into the Ruined Era, which kind of increases the kind of scope of its threat. And also, if you consider the Void Knight, that it's following them no matter where they go. So you do have a little bit of that. It's not as it's not as what would be a good word for this. It's not as volatile and fast as to be if you travel from the Ruined Era to another era as the player, you are doing that time and place to being void consumed. It's not to that extent, but there is a bit of travel that can happen there that you can see with the Void Knight as a class and what Apophis is doing in Chapter 9, and you even see a bit of that in some of the Monolith Echo systems where you have void creatures, going into these places and times they shouldn't be in the Monolith. Let's see here. We got another question from By Rule is On. I think it's more of a gameplay question. Will exist a simple way to leveling alts without having to replay the campaign? Mike, you want to hit that one?
Yeah. So in single player, it's going to remain the same way it is essentially now, where you'll be able to use you'll be able to use dungeons to skip parts of the campaign. There'll be more dungeons, so it'll be easier to do. In multiplayer, you can get your friends to help you. So there's that, which can help a lot. It's possible things like that could change slightly, but right now they can help you a lot. You'll always have to complete some side quests in order to unlock your passive and idle slots. But those do happen a lot faster once you're level 100 or 50 even.
Okay, got another question from Perry the Pig. How did you decide that Grail was the last emperor? A mortal emperor? Well, that's quite presumptuous, isn't it?
Objection, leading
Who
question?
says that's a leading question? Who's to say that Grail becomes a mortal emperor? That's not substantiated in any way. That was not in Discovery.
Don't forget to drink lots of water, everybody.
Oh yes, I am getting a little parched. Also, I have a gigantic water jug. Okay, let's see what we got next. There is a non-lore question regarding set items and how they stand versus legendaries. Do you want to hit that, Mike?
Sure, yeah, it's... We're still unsure exactly what we're doing with set items, so they're kind of up in the air right now. The big problem with set items right now is the sheer volume of mods that they already get. So adding new ones is dangerous in some situations. I think I saw something there about set affixes being added in. We actually had those for a while and were very poorly received, interestingly enough. Some people really love them, so I don't want to write that off completely, but in general they were not great. Maybe we just didn't quite execute them properly, so they could come back. It's possible, but we're still working out exactly what we're going to do with set items. We're well aware that they are not in the running for top tier endgame gear at the moment. So please don't think we're ignoring that.
Alright, we have another question from Random Name X. My favorite character is the Lost Spriggan in the Lilas Arbor. We'll see him or his future progeny again. If anything ever happened to him, I would kill everyone in this room and then myself. Me too, buddy. Me too. Well, there actually was planned to be one more little kind of epilogue to the Lost Spriggan's little arc back in the patch that they debuted in, but we ran into some time constraints on that where I got most of it working, but there's some like little elements that we didn't have ready in time. So there is a small continuation to their story that I definitely have, in the backlog, ready to. I want to get it into this next patch. No guarantees, of course, but I do have a little continuation for the Lost Spriggan plan that I would love to get in sooner rather than later. Oh, and we have another one from Quiet For Me. With the flavor text of Legacy of the Quiet Forest, this branch will protect you even when I cannot. The last words Quiet heard from her forest friend. Would it be possible if I could get a NPC in story related to Spriggan lore? Long shot, I know, but I'm the biggest nerd about Spriggans. Taking my shot. Well, it depends on whenever we add content that would go to the part of the world that is referencing. I could definitely see diving into that whenever we add content that tackles that area, but that is a big to be determined, I would say. But I'm a big fan of Spriggans as well. I mean, that's probably why I was pretty gung-ho about putting in the Lost Spriggan when we put in that dungeon. So I would love to get in more Spriggan lore as well. Let's see here.
I just found a nice ring.
Ooh, drag that tooltip up a little bit. It's covered by my own face.
Here. Nailed it.
Ooh, nice. Oh, that's a lot of fire resist. 30 fire damage. Nice. Alrighty. Another question from Nerdy Joe 314. You just answered a question about Gaspar, but called him Urza. I know you'll play MTG. Is Gaspar based on Urza? So I interpreted the question as referring to the wrong elder due to the second quest echo in the Ruined Refuge, or Lost Refuge. I forget the exact name of that timeline.
It was a second point in the storyline that had the same situation.
Yeah, exactly. Like that second quest echo that does feature Urza rather than Gaspar, and Gaspar is in the third quest echo of that timeline. So yeah, it is Urza, but
it's spelled differently.
Yeah, it's spelled with a ERZA, but I will say, like, it's not based on the character directly, since sad to say, I don't know MTG's Urza's lore that well. I know Mike does, because Mike is a big MTG fan. But I am a big fan of that. I like that name a lot, so I just kind of dove into that for that. Gaspar, as in the Elder Gaspar, his name is based off of a character from Chrono Trigger, also named Gaspar, which itself I believe is a reference to the three wise men from old Bible holiday stuff. I believe.
Nativity.
Yeah, that thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Gaspar is a reference of a reference.
Love it.
Okay, let's see here. Got another question from Perry the Pig. Or actually, respecting. I think that question's already been answered. Yeah, Perry the Pig. If Shade of Orbis is a reflection of Orbis and themed as Void Damage, is this related to the Void Knight's Echoes? I could see the argument being made that the Void Knight's echoes are reflections of the Void Knight in a similar way that the Shades are reflections of Orbis. It's kind of tapping into that same sort of magic, the same sort of taking these kind of snapshots of this kind of like emotional and will state. So I could see a sort of symmetry between the Void Knight's echoes and Orbis's shades. I can definitely see that. Got a really question from Ira Weird. Does that mean that the shades are on the same power tier as the four lesser gods? I don't want to say that conclusively. I would say that they are very powerful beings, and if they were to be active in the prime timeline to the same extent that they are active in the kind of morass of dead and broken timelines that the monolith gives you access to, that they would be a big problem, and I could definitely see them being a potential threat to the gods. I don't want to say conclusively that they are on the exact same power tier though, but it is comparable. I would say it's comparable.
They're in the same conversation.
Exactly.
They've never gone up against each other, so we don't really know, right?
Exactly, yeah. And I just for later. Okay, let's see here. We got one from Tur3K. Do waypoints and portal from players serve a purpose only for gameplay, or are there lore implications? So they primarily exist for the gameplay, but there are some lore connections to where they aren't, entirely gameplay abstractions. Like the waypoints are a old technology from before the ancient era, similar to the monolith, that have just persisted and been unable to be damage too much or alter too much across the eras. And that's actually part of the plot of I'm so used to thinking of internal names for the chapters. I'm trying to remember what number is chapter D. That would it be chapter 5? The one where you're Imperial Majelka.
Yeah,
I always think of it as that's 5. Okay, gotcha. We'll pick into internal stuff, but we call that chapter D whenever we're talking dev stuff. But anyways, part of what you're doing in chapter 5 is getting access to the artificial waypoint, and that kind of brings the waypoints a bit closer to having lore implications, in that the Immortal Empire wants to harness and manipulate their power, but doesn't really have a good, efficient way to do so. So they're trying to pretty much create their own waypoint via the artificial waypoints that you encounter at the end of chapter 5 and beginning of chapter 6. So they do exist in world, in the setting, though the primary reason they exist is, of course, gameplay. But yeah, they are acknowledged in the setting as existing. Though, really only you and other people with similar powers as you have the kind of unfettered use of them like you do. Outside of, cases where the, Immortal Empire is trying to make their own that they can use like that.
I'm gonna take on the shade right now. We're doing a shade.
Oh my god!
I don't do this very often on stream because I'm terrible at it.
What's your favorite shade combination?
of the 9,000 there are?
I like the ones with the mozzarella sticks and the chicken sandwich. And a Diet Pepsi. That's my favorite combo here. Storm, close enough. Alright, next question. From Irewind, damn, so wanted Mortitus to be the Emperor. I'm a big fan of Mortitus as well, and I do want to delve into his history and future story eventually. It's just not quite what's going to be covered by the scope of the campaign, but I will say I've got future story expansion, continuation kind of notes and plans that do involve Mortitus, so eventually I do want to round back to him and say, like, hey, what could he have gone up to if the Ruined Era didn't happen, for example? But that's big ifs and big down the roads. Okay. From Kathulhu, when will the next big patch be, and what will be in it? I will answer that's less of a lore question, but I'm going to answer for Mike because he's dealing with a lot of things shooting very bad things at him. We are working on some cool stuff, and we don't have a hard release date to say publicly.
You just say when it's ready.
When it's ready.
It's just we don't have details set in stone yet. It's when multiplayer is ready to go, and we're confident that it's going to be a smooth multiplayer launch, and then we'll release the patch, and everything else that gets made in the meantime gets added.
Keep an eye out to our socials when we'll have some cool blog posts about it.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna make marketing mad by saying something here.
I crushed that. I just want to put that out there. Just no problem.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, we got a question from Pikachu Song 989. What would be the likelihood of a personal domain system? As in I assume that to mean a sort of hideout or personal housing system. We've talked about systems like that before. I feel like we've generally kind of shied away from going too deep on that side of things. What are your thoughts, Mike?
It's so right now we really want the main player hubs to be places where you like see people and hang out and meet people and have that sort of sense of world, specifically in End of Time and a few other places too. And having hideouts is usually the term we use for it. Does create a lot of it's a lot of fun to build a hideout and everything like that, and it's something that we may add in the future. But for now, until things are really established, at least it's hard to justify creating a place where people can go hide out and not mingle with everyone else. And I know a lot of people don't like to necessarily talk to people, and you don't have to, but it's just having that sense of world where you can see other players. We think is a really powerful tool. So having taking that away by adding in a hideout is possibly a downside to it, and it doesn't really add anything to the mechanical features of the game. So if we were going to add a hideout system, we'd want it to have some sort of primary purpose, and we don't have that right now, and it's a bunch of extra work that would delay launch. So it's not on the 1.0 list, but it's not on the never list either.
I've always been a big fan of that sort of getting your personal touch to be seen in the world, being able to put up these kind of hey, this is mine and it looks this way because I made it look this way and other people's doesn't look like this. That's definitely a big appeal to me, and I definitely see that appeal there. But yeah, I don't know what shape that sort of system will take in the future, but we definitely acknowledge that it is interesting, and a lot of us are interested in that as well. But yeah, we want to kind of foster that sense of community and a larger world, as much as we can. So having those hubs where you see other players takes a little precedence over that. But yeah, eventually I do, and I am a big fan of that sort of getting your personality across in the game in some way. Okay, next question. Let me scroll down a second. From Quiet For Me, with the Forgotten Knight being a first iteration of the hero, what will the role be in future, or will we ever get more information about her role in the lore? I will say being the first iteration of the hero might be some outdated lore. We've bounced around a couple times on her exact origin, but I will say that I do want to do more with the Forgotten Knight in the future. I whenever we have the content that involves tackling Orbis directly, I do want the Forgotten Knight to have a role there in some fashion. I can't say anything concrete about what that could look like or be, but I definitely want to get her involved more, and that story beat of actually going to face Orbis directly will likely be one of the best times for us to dig deeper into the Forgotten Knight and what we can do with her. And just a little bit of kind of meta kind of background trivia about the Forgotten Knight. The inspiration for her actually comes from the fact that way back when, I think before, like, back in Kickstarter times, and I forget if we made this change before we entered our first Steam alpha or not, but the Sentinel was not one of our characters way back when. Instead of the Sentinel, we had the Knight, and the Knight was a female character. And eventually we swapped out the Knight for our Sentinel that we know and love these days. And when that happened, that actually was the inspiration for me to create the Forgotten Knight character. That is the kind of meta behind the scenes origin of the Forgotten Knight. She's supposed to be kind of a wink wink, kind of hinty, acknowledgement that the Knight, the female Knight character that used to be a playable character in the past, it's kind of a hint that she existed. And the Forgotten Knight is kind of fourth wall breakingly kind of implied to be that player Knight that now is no longer a player character. But that's just the kind of meta behind the scenes kind of inspiration for her. Trivia!
Yeah!
Okay, we got one from V Cognito. Will there be improved combat feel, dying animations, and all those things you mentioned on forum in your last episode and 0.9, or that patch is almost all multiplayer focused? I'll let Mike hit that if he doesn't mind.
Yeah, so we are... yes, it'll be in there, is the short answer. We're not really developing two halves to the game. We're developing just the game now. So whenever we start adding in features like that, it's goes for everyone. Like it's we're not going to start excluding things intentionally like that. So yeah, those are coming. Even if they're not in for every single enemy in the game, by the time it rolls around, we'll still include it for the ones that are. They're in for a ton of things, though. The floodgates opened recently, and I was just shocked at how many things they got in for it. And it's a lot of little tiny things, like I was playing a Cinder Strike bow mage on online recently on our multiplayer test, and just when things die and they're just their body kind of singes, and you get that nice effect that goes on it and everything. It just looks gorgeous. I don't know, little things.
Yeah, very excited for everyone to be able to get access to and see all those little combat improvement details that we're have in the background right now. Very excited for everyone else to see how much cooler those make everything.
Yeah.
We got another one from Nerdy Joe 314. I think this is another gameplay focused one. Are you going to have party play options for XP scaling / damage scaling so everyone in a party has an even chance to contribute?
So we're not going to scale power. So when you hop into a party, that's your character. Your character is as your character is. Enemy toughness scales. So the health that enemies have scales up based on the number of players, so that the basically your average damage output is kind of what would be your normal damage output from single player, and it's not exact. It's just a way to make it easier to understand. As far as XP scaling goes, it's the same as single player. Really, nothing much changes, really. XP scaling, it's all individual, so you still get the same amount of experience from killing things. They're 4 times harder, say you have 4 people, but you've got 4 times as many people, so you kill them 4 times faster, so it evens out, pretty stable. And then you have... XP scaling is the same as single player, where it's max 5 level difference going up. So if you're level 10 and you're in a level 15 zone, you gain experience as though it's level 15. If you're level 10 and you're in a level 100 zone, you're gaining experience as though it was a level 15 zone still. So you cannot gain experience faster than a zone 5 levels above your current level. And that's the way it is in single player now too, anyways. Whew.
Good answer. Got another one from Ira Weird. Considering in the Reign of Dragons, it's mentioned specifically that the lesser gods failed to subdue the dragons. Is that the original reason they were created / came to be? Or was it just a coincidence within the primary and most other timelines that they just went to war? So, I would say that subduing the dragons is one of the reasons that the gods exist, but not the, core reason. The intent of the gods had for them was to essentially help her in guiding and protecting humanity at the beginning of whenever humanity emerged back into the world. And the gods were set up to guide and protect them along with her throughout this sort of revitalization of the world. But due to certain events, Eterra goes dormant instead, leaving the gods on their own to kind of tackle this task of guiding, leading, and protecting humanity. And one of the many threats that they had to, deal with were very much the dragons. In addition to them, there was also other titans, like the stone titan, the mountain beneath that you see in one of the dungeons. There were other titans like the mountain beneath at the ancient era as well that the four gods had to deal with on their own without Eterra around. That part of the reason why they exist is was to deal with not just dragons but these other titans and really any of these other kind of threats and risks that would get in the way of humanity kind of flourishing and becoming the best that they could be as Eterra intended. Let's see, let me scroll down a second and find our nice next new question. Let's see here. Let's see here. Oh, there's a long one from Tylo Games. I don't know if that's actually a question or just a very long comment.
Where does it end? Is it a question? I just see it too.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I'm trying to parse if it's like a question or just commentary. Apologies. I think it's just commentary. It's very interesting stuff, but it doesn't really lead into that's a very interesting look at that.
Tyler, if you've got a question you'd like us to answer, please post it.
Yes. Found a. Okay, there's a combat field 1.
Sometimes we just get far enough behind that the questions start getting repeated because they think we skipped them.
Yeah, apologies if it feels like we're skipping quite. We're digging through these in order, so we get a bit of a backlog.
Yeah.
Okay.
Will Last Epoch run on Steam Deck? Maybe. Some people already have it working. We don't officially support it yet.
Oh, we have one from Seberon666. Will we get Cloak Cosmetics? That bald dude got one. So, are we gonna get Cloak Cosmetics? I think the back slot is a very, very fruitful space for cosmetics. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I mean, it looks like there's one in the cosmetics tab already.
Yeah, and internally we have some concepts for some back slot items that are pretty cool. And also, you're dying. Huh, there you go.
Yeah. I was a little delay on it. You won't be able to save me from looking at the stream.
Oh god, if only I could. I would like nothing better than to save your life. Alright, we got from Random Name X. Lore question. Since y'all are big Chrono Trigger fans, will there be a secret ending where we can meet and fight the devs? I know Primal's Mike is in the game. All the clues are there. What's the name of this emoji? It is LOL. We don't have current plans for something like that, but one thing we want to do eventually is vastly increase the sort of variety of events, not only in the Monolith Echoes, but just kind of in the game in general. And I feel like a secret Monolith Echo event where you fight secret dev bosses, or even just meet dev-inspired NPCs would be really interesting. We don't currently have plans for it right now, but that would be a fantastic little event to sneak in there once we can really get our teeth into increasing the variety of Monolith events. So, big maybe, big down the road.
I just want to say that arena bosses in limited arena runs is a perfect place for something like that. So,
you're right.
Yeah, definitely haven't thought about that before at all.
Okay, we got another one from Ira Weird. If we go back to the Mortis story, will we see some of the pre-Divine Era story before he was imprisoned? So, as it is, the four Beacon of Era, like, umbrellas we have, Ancient, Divine, Imperial, Ruined, those are all, like, campaign-wise, specifically at certain kind of moments in those eras. Typically towards the ends of those eras where things are about to, go down and kind of cause a big shift in the world state, as it were. And the Mortis events, his backstory, takes place pretty far back in the Divine Era, but pretty far after, the point you see in the Ancient Era. So his backstory, the events there, don't really fit cleanly into the current campaign. Not just on that front, but also one of the campaigns dealing with. The best place we'll likely see his backstory in more detail would be in the shape of either a Monolith alt timeline or some sort of other like post 1.0 kind of story expansion content. And that's a big if. And that's all if one of the next ones focuses more on him. So we don't have current plans for it, but it is something I definitely want to delve into, since like Herot's backstory involving Mortis is one of the kind of story threads that I'm very fond of personally, that I definitely do want to explore more as we get into like content past what we're currently planning.
Oh, 5 ice beetles! Come with me, my pretties.
Okay, from Who, will there be new classes added at or by release? If you mean base classes, I might be confident in saying no. Is that correct, Mike?
Yeah, no new base classes for release. We've got plenty of classes to do for release. Mastery classes, there will be the 3 missing mastery classes. Falconer, Rune Master, and Warlock will be added at least by 1.0 release. They may be added slightly earlier, they may not be added after. It will be 1.0 at the latest for those 3 master classes, and you'll have the full set. It'll be symmetrical and everything. More mastery classes, more base classes, those things could come after 1.0, but 1.0, we've got the classes we want mapped out ready.
Well, one day we'll have that Bard, Monk, Artificer mix. One day.
It's like 4 classes in one there.
Just wait till you get to the bees. Alright, we got a question from Master Sword 1291. What specific aspects of Eterra's backstory, his background history, and god lore do you, Lore Master, see being relevant in an intro video for Last Epoch? So, it depends on what exactly you mean by intro video. If you mean intro as in the beginning of the game, I would say that the history that was relevant to the beginning of the game would be setting up the situation that the player finds himself in the Divine Era before they end up being pulled to the Ruined Era. So, if in that context, I would say like the specific thing that an intro video like that would hit on is more clearly sort of laying out the threat of Raya in the Divine Era and the situation of the shards being sought after and important. If we're talking about an intro video as in like showing off the entire game itself, as in a sort of like trailer as it were, I would say touching on the fact that there was an ancient era with this temple and gods, and that has like fallen to the ground, and there's multiple different eras that all kind of lead into this ruined era where everything is dead, dying, and being consumed by oblivion. I would say like an intro video that is more comprehensive like that would have to kind of show like, hey, this world was this big, beautiful, high fantasy mythical place that over time turned into this kind of ruined purple goo covered muck, and it's up to you to stop it. So depends. So short version is intro to the game as in just starting the game as a player character, more clearly defining the Divine Era conflict. Intro the game as in showing off the game as a whole, very clearly hitting that note of the world's going to end up at this terrible place, and you need to go back in time to stop that. All right, we got a question.
I just want to highlight how crazy this item is that I just dropped. It's a single affix T7 item. which you like almost never see. That like there's nothing else on it, so it's an exalted item, so it has a ton of forging potential on it. So you can put anything you want on it, but it has a sweet, relevant, like good T6 or T7 affix. I think it's crazy. It's like the lightning hammer base with lightning damage. That's nuts. That's a rare find right there. I just want to point out it's cool. There's also a question: are you concerned about D4 and PoE2 coming out or potentially launching in 2023? No. And I just went into an unnecessary echo because I could have just gone for the boss.
All right, we got a question from how do you pronounce that? Moax Hit 200. Moax Hit 200. Why does Hera die so easily to Raya? Isn't he a god? Well, it's about how they have kind of applied their powers, as it were, and what they have, been working towards and, done in the events leading up to that. Herat had pretty much doled out more of his power to, say, like Mortitus and protecting and, guiding, people in Borea, more so than Raya, who's been more focused on the sort of aggression and, being this powerful, threat himself. And combined with that is also in that fight itself, Herat is worried about protecting the humans on his side that are with him, including you, the player, whereas Raya is much less concerned about collateral damage in that sense and has feels no need to kind of hold back in any way. And so really, if you look at it a certain way, it's because you, the player, were there that he died. How terrible.
How could you?
How terrible. How terrible how Mox had 200.
Just in case anyone's new here, he knows how to pronounce it.
Hey, Mox. Okay, last, we got another question. Thank you for calling him out Ironweird. Not tagging properly, jeez.
Yeah, gosh. Don't you know how we do things here, Mox Duet?
Also, just so everyone knows, we're not just bullying a random person in chat, that's actually the game director.
Yeah.
Anyways, X Isengard X. What real-world mythologies did you guys end up drawing from? The parallel stuff from the Kabbalah and Hindu mythology ended up looking well-researched, IMO. Oh, it's a big melting pot. It's very much pulling from what kind of story threads just really resonate with what we're trying to get across for each kind of set piece. Like, I was a big fan of drawing on the sort of like Greek mythology, kind of capricious kind of god themes with Lagan, and hence why like it's kind of funny with Lagan's name. It's actually supposed to be a reference to Ladon, which is a sea serpent in Greek mythology, and it's only after we got like super deep into it, it kind of clicked. We were like, oh, it also sounds like Lagoon with one less O. It's supposed to be a reference to Ladon, a Greek mythology monster, but it could also be read as Lagoon. It's like, anyway, and Dagon the it's supposed to be a mix of like Dagon and Ladon, two different kind of mythological figures, which also just happens to end up sounding like Lagoon. Anyways, but yeah, like it really is a grab bag of. I wouldn't call it any one mythology as a specific inspiration, but yeah, like looking up like inspirations for like Majasa and Majalka and that whole region, definitely dipped a lot into like Hindu and India. Looking at Raya's stuff, looking that had its own like set of influences. Like it is a melting pot and a grab bag because so many of these different mythologies have such great like just individual kind of themes and stories and like influences you can pull from, and just makes something that really resonates from it. Let's see here. Got another question from Shadow Dweller TV. Will we ever see the Epoch actual appearance? We are actually working in improving some animations that will involve a actual like physical appearance by the Epoch for some of the time travel events. That is still in the works. Not sure. I don't want to call out that being present in 0.9, but it is in the works. So we do have a model for it, back on our side, and we are working on getting it, incorporated into more stuff.
Also, thank you, Erwin, for gifting a sub to Reimer, who super duper
Woo!
needs it as one of the mods. But
I'm sure he appreciates it either way.
I hope that was intentional because I find it hilarious.
We love you.
Lots of
Okay.
drops there.
We've got a first-time chat from Templar Oath. How deep does I love the pew-pews, don't worry. How deep does corruption get involved with the story? Will there be an epilogue where corruption wins? So, corruption is an interesting sort of term and theme here in regards to the story. I would say that more than corruption, a lot of the story's kind of beats and themes kind of deal with the idea of people and forces trying to improve and guide the world in their own way, and that resulting in it actually hurting things and making things worse. And the big question of should you try to improve things even though the risk is that you can just make it worse, or should you try anyways in the hope that you do make things better? And you kind of get that with, like, I don't want to get too deep into the Mortal Emperor's backstory, but, because spoilers, but, the Immortal Emperor started out wanting to improve the world for humans and free them from the, tyranny of the gods and unite humanity in this sort of, glorious unification where everything's going to be better for everybody. And as you can see in the Imperial era, that just ends up not being the case at all, and very arguably, but not too much of an argument, ends up worse than the Divine Era was for the vast majority of people. And the Immortal Emperor is kind of like the main kind of obvious example of that sort of trying to make things better but ends up making it worse kind of situation. Like, so I could say that, in Raya's perspective, Raya saw his sort of domination of the world being from the motivation of, hey, these other gods are not running the world properly. We're not living up to what Eterra lined out for us of, guiding the humans. I should take over and do it all myself because these other gods aren't doing it good enough. So even though Raya is, tyrannical and conquest-minded, his ultimate kind of intention and motivation is based on, ultimately making the world better from his own view. And there are other forces that might have a similar sort of perspective in their motivations. So I would say corruption in the story a lot of times takes the form of the sort of misplaced, I don't want to say misplaced motivation, but more so this motivation of trying to make things better but making it worse, and should you continue to try and make things better despite that risk. And I might have gone completely off the track of the question, but I will say at the end of the story, I like happy endings, but I also like endings where the story is kind of free from the forces that are taking away their choices and ability to make things better. And I am not sure they even answered the corruption part of the question, but that's my answer.
That was a great answer. And I just want to shout out while we're here. Thank you very much, just here for a 13-month resub. That is awesome. Glad to have you with us. And then also, don't get many of these, but much appreciated nonetheless. It'll all still go to the same charity regardless of how it comes in. Random X, thank you very much for a $10 tip. Says thanks for answering my questions. P.S. Okay, fine. Mike Primalist. There's a bunch of emojis. Mike Ultra Deluxe skin when and how much? I think this is for a Primalist skin to look like me, and you get like a 50% move penalty with it. So I don't know. I don't think you'd want one.
I'd wear it. Alright, we got another question from Quiet For Me. With Orbis being the Paragon, or at least viewed as the Paragon of Darkness with his ties to the Void, is there multiple Void dimensions, or just a single Void dimension in which he originates? Okay, I'm gonna unpack this one real quick. I would say that the Void has one source, and that one source is Orbis. So that might be the cleanest answer to that question. There is, like, the void appears in multiple timelines, but the void is intrinsically kind of connected to Orbis. So, I will not say that, like, there are other... Yeah, I think that's probably the best answer for that question. It is a bit of a... Yeah, like acknowledge multiple layers of logic in there. We got another question from A Quiet For Me. Given how there is a monolith crystal in all the secret areas in the story so far, will they play a part in the campaign story later if you find them all, or is that just a hidden Easter egg? What secret areas? I haven't found any of them.
I don't know what you're talking about either.
Yeah, secret areas? Well, I would know better there's a secret area. Anyways, we got another one from TL Games. This is a very much a technical question.
Hit me.
Question. Why haven't game developers considered implementing a system where the game assets are made of parts and assembled in game, e.g. a weapon is made of parts, so we only have to make new parts to add new weapons, can be extended to enemies too? Oh, it's a simplified version of that 3-part question earlier.
Yeah, so I guess the answer is that it has been considered. So I can't answer it because it's we have considered it, really. But I think the underlying question is, why haven't you done this? And the short answer really is that you typically end up with a better quality product when it's like created together. And I understand that the big feature that you miss out on when you don't have something like that is you can't make custom enemies and weapons on the fly. And there's a lot of really great examples of games doing this where you can laugh at them because they hit that uncanny valley pretty quick. There was an RTS from forever, from like the 90s, I think, that you could like make your own like genetic monstrosities to like build your own like creatures. You'd be like, I want the legs of a cheetah and the head of a raptor and the tusks of a boar or something like that. It would make you would make your units through this like weird genetic resequencing system.
I too remember Dark Spore.
No, it wasn't Spore. It wasn't Spore.
Was it an Impossible Creatures?
Maybe, yeah, that sounds right.
I know Michael likes to link that a lot.
Maybe that's what that was. I haven't seen him link that forever, but it was. Anyways, it also takes up a lot more. Things are a lot cleaner on our end with it being set enemies, and some of them actually have been. All of the worst enemies in the game are just that, is us doing exactly what you're talking about, and they're all slowly getting redone as proper monsters that look real and better. We did that for a lot of things for a long time because it was cheap to do. You can do it really quick and easy, and the quality was not as good as the custom-made, fully built from scratch versions of those same things, and so we transitioned away from doing that ourselves.
Good answer. Alright, we got another one from V. Cognito. Yeah, here is one very important, at least for me. Since I love cold builds, are you going to do the same with freezing attack dying animations that you did with fire in the dev post? Freeze enemies shattering when they die, etc.?
Yeah, I don't know if physically splitting up into small pieces happens, like actually shattering into chunks, but there's different effects for each element.
Mm-hmm. Including the kind of shocked one, like where you can see little kind of like crackles of electricity still going across the body. I'm a big fan of that one.
Yeah, there's also a question here that was missed from that I didn't have a tag, but I've never played Last Epoch before. I prefer indirect damage builds in RPGs such as minions or totems or pets. Does Epoch have those options? Absolutely. Tons of them. All over the place.
I like the Shaman Totem builds, especially when you do Upheaval Totem. I'm a big fan of Storm Totem and Upheaval Totem. That's one of my favorite Shaman builds.
Yeah, so the Beastmaster, or the Primalist is one of the base classes, and it has Beastmaster and Shaman, which have a lot of animal companions and totems. The Acolyte has a master called the Necromancer, which is a ton of undead minion summons. Then there's sprinkles of minions elsewhere as well. The rogue that I'm on right now does have a couple of those, for example, with Decoy and Ballista. And then you also get Sentinel, which has quite a few in Forge Guard, actually. There's Manifest Armor, there's Ring of Shields, there's Manifest Weapons, there's possibly nothing else, and I've run out of things in a list, so etc.
All right, we got another one from Quicksilver. Will there be some kind of pet loot that would get us to first let pets pick up loot from the ground instead of having to pick it up ourselves?
Unlikely, at least initially. It's possible that we might add something like that. If we were to add something like that in a hypothetical situation, it would likely only pick up gold, at least initially, for sure. And then if we were to add that as well, it would be something that you would be able to unlock through gameplay, and not be locked behind a paywall. Yes, we would probably, in a situation like that, allow the pets that you already have, like that you already can get pets, like mini pets. So like these mini pets would probably be those things that would pick those things up, and there would definitely be some. If the mini pets ever served a mechanical purpose, there would always be a way to get those mini pets, so at least some mini pet with identical mechanical advantage without paying any money. What I'm trying to say is we would never add a feature like that where the only way to access it is paying money. It's the roundabout way I'm trying to get there. But we don't have any plans for it right now. Ooh, that quiver is probably really good. Not bad.
All right, we got a question from. Let me double check. Yeah, got a question from first time chat, in fact, from LZFX. Love the game. Oh, love you too. Can't wait for MP and eventual 1.0. Any plans on adding more Void synergies? Given the prevalence of the Void in the world and lore, I'm a little disappointed that they've only seen Void available to the player in one mastery, or several somewhat niche, unique-oriented builds. Curious from a thematic standpoint, but also from a lore standpoint. This kind of, like stands on the fence between like lore and mechanics. Like, what do you how do you want to answer that, Mike?
I guess the from mechanics perspective is like vague foreshadowing comment.
Yeah,
it might not be the only way. It's good to have room to expand mechanical design space.
Like if we ever add, like, we've talked in the past about the potential of adding like extra masteries in the future, definitely a post 1.0 thing. And one of the common kind of threads that we sometimes like
don't say a name.
I'm not gonna say any names.
Okay, cool.
Because if I say a name for one of them, that name will just live forever.
Yeah.
But yeah, like we have dabbled. We have talked about having additional masters beyond the like planned 1.0 ones as like post 1.0 content, and then like the future down the road. And one of the common threads we hit on in those kind of talks is getting Void availability to more classes. So it's something we have definitely talked about. Definitely something we've talked about. Not likely to be a 1.0 thing. Actually, not likely. It's not going to be a 1.0 thing. I could say pretty confidently. But yeah, we have talked about it, and down the road, it has a non-zero chance for sure. Okay, got another one from Alu Cal. As my favorite thematic, are there any plans on remake or adds to the Shaman skill tree or spells before 1.0? Mike,
yeah, so you may notice that there's a missing skill in the Shaman tree still. There also we announced we were also removing one of the abilities in the Primalist base class, and then we didn't remove it. And so there's a little bit of room for new things to be added there. Shaman's definitely lacking. One of the most commonly called out skills for low quality, and we agree, just to be clear, is Tempest Strike, which is one of the main Primalist Shaman skills. Sorry. And so there's definitely room for improvement there. There's room for additions there. If you look at the quantity of, like, if you look at Beastmaster as the companion mastery, and druids as the transform mastery, and shamans as the totem mastery. There's a lot more companions and shapeshifters is about the same amount, but those are much more in-depth abilities on their own. There's many more companions than there are totems still for like top level skills. So that's a good assumption that there's probably going to be room to grow there.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of shaman. Like way back in the day when I played World of Warcraft, my main was an enhancement shaman, so I am definitely familiar with the cool thematic stuff of shamans and totems and all that. So yeah, I'm definitely excited to see some new stuff with the shaman, and it's definitely something we're excited for. Got another question from Quiet For Me. 2-in-1 lore question. Why can't Spriggan form have a void conversion like the cold one, considering there are void Spriggans in the game? Also, why no reptile form yet? We got bears, tree, and insects, but reptiles are missing for druid. Reptiles are important to nature too. I agree, reptiles are very important. Well, it is less of a can't and more of there's only so much room in the class design for these kind of different thematic elements, and it kind of comes down to picking ones that feel one more synergistic and more build enabling for the class versus others. Like, there's nothing explicitly like in the lore that keeps the Spriggan form from having a void conversion. It's more so the fact that as it is now class design wise, if you got like a void conversion on the Spriggan form for the druid, there would be like no other void stuff on the class to support that. So to kind of make that, like not just a dead end on that tree. Oh my god, Mike, you died! But to make sure that it's not, just a dead end of build crafting on that skill, we'd have to throw in a lot more void support throughout the rest of Druid and Primalist. So that's like, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, that's pretty much the situation there. Like it's not impossible lore-wise, it just, there's only so much room on that tree, and we'd have to get void support through the rest of Druid and Primalist to support that sort of conversion.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
And for the second half of the question about reptile form, that kind of comes down to a similar situation, but more so on just thematics. Like, there's nothing explicitly keeping reptiles from being a valid, like, option lore-wise for a druid to transform. It's more so that in the class thematics, we've got mammals via, the wolves, the saber-tooths, the bears, and werebear, and we have like entangling roots and other kind of plant themed stuff, and we have summon scorpion and like I'm guessing bees in some places, of course.
Which
we don't really have much. What?
Bees? They were
Bees? Classified
as fish in California.
Man, about to give me some crunchy fish mix. Anyway. Anyways, there is just, when it came down to that like last form for the druid, past werebear and spriggan, thematically an insect-based form just kind of had a stronger kind of through line of other things in the class than a reptile-based form, and combine that with the fact that like a reptile, an insect-based shapeshifter form, it's something I think we've really seen that often in other games in the genre. So it was kind of, one, it fit some of the other kind of insect summoning themes we had in the Druid and Primalist, and two, it's kind of something we haven't seen in general. I would love to see like an MTX like cosmetic like skin for the Swarmblade to turn it into like a raptor thresher lizard thing, but that's just hopes and dreams.
Yeah, and also it's when we're talking about adding content in the future, one of those places we can add content is new skills for existing classes. Like that's totally doable.
One day we'll get our Tricera form. One day. God. Okay.
Like there's lots of room here, right? Yeah.
Woo. Yeah, get it. Okay, let's see here. Let's scroll down and find the next juicy question. From Nerdy Joe 314. Do you worry about lore scope creep? Not quite sure what you mean by lore scope creep, to be honest.
Is the story becoming too convoluted, I think?
Gotcha. Yeah, I definitely acknowledge, I definitely see that concern. It's like I could definitely see like a world slash an alternate like sequence of events where when we had started, making the story for the game, we had gone with something a little more like little smaller in scope. Like I could see a version of events where the game pretty much was like just about the Imperial era or just about the Divine era, but when it comes down to it, when we first started the project, it was like a handful of us doing this like in our free time, like just a bunch of crazy people making a game studio out of nowhere. And the mentality we kind of had with that is we're gonna shoot our shot. Like, do we want to? This might be our only chance to make a video game. Do we want to go, hit for the bleachers and go for the crazy time traveling, like fate, gods, void, infinity, monster stuff? Yeah, let's go for it. Like this is our only chance to do it, kind of mentality.
Go big or go home.
Exactly. Like, so I do worry about scope creep sometimes, and sometimes, I do think, like, man, what if we had just made the story just about the Divine Era with no time travel and you're fighting Riot, or just in the Imperial Era, no time travel, you're just fighting the Mortal Emperor? And we didn't. We went for the larger scope one because we like time travel and we want to just exactly go big or go home.
So I died a little while ago, so I owe people a spoiler.
Huh.
Which is an unwritten rule that I kind of just I do if I have spoilers ready to go, and I have one. So here's a little tease. Another armor set for Primalist this time coming up. This is a fairly early game Primalist armor set, but I think it looks really cool. It's a little turnabout for it. It's a little interesting. Usually we've been seeing a lot of Sentinel ones where it covers the whole body, so there's gaps in this one because you get that model underneath a lot. But yeah, this is a new fairly early game Primalist armor set. It's pretty sweet. Get one more turnaround.
Beautiful.
Right.
And since this is a special stream, I'm going to give a spoiler as well. Just get me involved in it. Like, so, bonus special stream spoiler: Grail is a terrible flute player. Yulia makes fun of him all the time and tells him to not play his stupid flute whenever he tries to. Bonus spoiler. Write it down, put it into the theories. It's all there.
That's a subtle reference.
If it is, I might have done it accidentally because I'm not sure what I was really referencing. D&D what the reference was because I didn't intend to make it, I guess.
Thank you very much, Airweird has gifted 5 subs to the channel. Congrats if you got one of those.
Pew pew pew.
Glad to have everyone with us, and yeah, I'm having a great stream so far. We were actually just cruising through. I just looked down at the time to see what it was when I was putting up the spoiler there. My goodness, I thought we were nowhere near this far through it. So we don't have a ton of time. I don't know if we're super far behind the questions or not. If we haven't got to your question yet.
It looks like we're closer to the bottom than I thought, at least. So I think, yeah, if we're going to, I always forget. Do we go to 5 or 4:30?
5.
5. Oh yeah, we got time for these, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sweet.
so next question. Yeah. Next question from Master Sword 1291. Are there any plans to insert a cinematic video during specialization choice which shows off unique aspects of the player chosen spec, background, and lore? So, I would say that just a straight up video, I would not expect that. But there are plans to revamp the whole mastery selection process to get more background and lore and more just kind of presentation involved there. So I wouldn't say like an overt video. I feel like we could have like the mechanics kind of oriented video of showing off masteries better placed somewhere else. But we do want to revamp that mastery selection process to get more of the background and lore involved there. Big to be determined. Don't have any hard, like dates or timelines on that. But that is definitely been talked about and has some, sketched out early plans for that kind of thing. So it is something we want to revamp for sure. But as far as like a very mechanics focused version of that is about showing off the mechanics side of positions, I could see a better place for that than the we'll have to hit that bridge more once we're on the bridge.
And it's a hype train rolling in. Thank you very much, Ralph-a-later, for your Twitch Prime sub. Glad to have you with us.
Pew pew pew.
This is for heavy.
All right, we got a first-time chat from Legacy 8K. When you do balance changes and particular item balances, are you looking to make items legacy to remain in game, or change all instances of items existing? I'll throw that to Mike.
The way the item, I just thought my pet was an enemy and tried to shoot it. The way that the item system works is that it does. It's hybrid answer, I guess is the right answer. So for things like unique items, for example, the unique items, the way they're set up, they just have like a number that says I am unique item 7, and then here are my like rolls on the 7 stats that unique item 7 has, or whatever it is. So when we change what item 7 is, all item 7s that are in the world change with it. So you won't see legacy unique items like you would in, for example, Path of Exile, but there are some legacy item affixes for rare magic items and exalted items, I guess, that can show up, and they'll show up as basically extra sealed affixes. So some people who've been around for a long time may have weird items sitting in their stash with affixes on them that you can't get anymore. So we do have a system to create legacy magic rare and exalted items, but set and unique items will not do that.
Alrighty, we got another one from Ira Weird. I may have missed it over the boss fun talk, totally not because of stream lagged, but why exactly does Raya beat Hero so easily if they are brothers in arms? There is a bit of a power difference between Raya and Hirot, partly due to just how they have used and doled out their powers over the thousands of years of the Divine Era. Hirot, had Moritus, which kind of took some divine power from him in his creation, whereas Raya has no like direct progeny like that he's kind of doled his power out to. And in combination with that, Raya has a much more just aggressive goal and motivation. He's been building up his forces and his own power for the intent of striking against other gods for a while, whereas Hirot has more of a peaceful nature, want to just protect his own part of the world, protect his own people.
Also, Red Dick wins.
And that too. I mean, like honestly, like that is I know that's supposed to be like kind of a joke answer, but that's kind of part of it as well. Honestly, they're in that exact moment of Hirot fighting Raya, like Hirot's focused on defense, partly because he knows that his forces are nearby and he doesn't want them to get hurt, and you're there and he doesn't want you to get hurt. Whereas Raya has no qualms about collateral damage and just taps all his mana and fire axes him to the face and gets lethal. So there is it's that kind of thing where multiple factors, but the sheer aggression and intent to kill with Raya played a big factor in it. Hero would have been very willing to leave that fight with both parties alive as long as his the people he's in charge of and protecting made it out as well. Raya was there to kill. That's kind of a big part of it.
Shout out to the magic card you're referencing, Lava Axe, with the best lore text ever written on a magic card. Well, second best.
I knew I got the name wrong. It was something Axe.
Yeah, it just says catch on 7th edition Lava Axe. It just says catch. Most fun I've ever had losing a draft. My friend just threw the card at me and said catch.
So this is super off topic, but my favorite loss I've ever seen in Magic was with my cousin at a Magic the Gathering, like a Friday Magic. God, what was it called? Yeah, Friday Night Magic, and there was a spell in that set of standard where it reflects the damage back to the person who's doing damage but doubled, and they both had multiple copies of that card where they just threw the damage back and forth until one person got hit for like 60. It was great.
Nice. That's awesome.
Oh yeah. All right. Another question from Riz Bloodlord. What is the Void's motivation? The Void's motivation is to erase existence. As far as the history of the Void's doing that, when it comes down to it, the Void's motivation is to erase a timeline in totality by turning all of that timeline into more Void. Essentially, what you see in almost all of the Void infested, Void corrupted parts of the game is technically a transitory state where the Void is spreading, turning things into Void, creating monsters that also intend to create more things into Void. The ultimate goal, the ultimate motivation of Void in these places where it has influence is to keep on spreading Void until all is Void and becomes a sort of homogeneous kind of darkness. So a lot of the horrors and terrible monstrosities you see in the Void, those are vehicles to spread Void further until the point where everything is this just featureless darkness. So yeah, bad stuff. I'm gonna drink some water real quick because now my throat's getting a little dry.
Yeah, drink water, everybody. And after this, you should all take a break and go outside for a minute. Look at this. Look at the sky. I almost said sun.
I know. First I'm doing out here is I'm gonna go touch some grass.
Yeah.
Delicious bee-infested grass. Gonna make a great fish stick. All right. Another question from NotCho55, a first-time chat, in fact. Is it a long time until full release? And is it a lot to do if I start playing it now? We don't have a hard time to say for full release, and Mike just interrupt me if I say anything that I shouldn't be saying on that front. But as far as it's a lot to do to start playing, you can get on Steam and play it right now. There are hundreds of hours of content to have with Last Epoch at this moment. I am getting tongue-tied. Wow.
Yeah, there's a ton of content right now. There's different content for different types of players. If you're a big fan of trying out different builds and experimenting with things and mucking about to see how things work together and all that sort of stuff, there's an absurd amount of stuff to do right now. If you're more of a play through the campaign story type player, there's definitely lots. There's a lot more of that getting added and improved soon. Yeah, constantly evolving. The online is not there yet. There's no multiplayer yet. It's that's in internal testing only so far.
Soon TM.
Yeah, soon TM.
All right, we have another question from Quicksilver. Thank you a lot for the pet loot answer. You're welcome, Quicksilver. We love you. Another question from Aya Weird. Can you give us a tiny tidbit of lore about the missing masteries? Beyond their mastery choice text, is there anything you can tell us lore-wise about the missing masteries and how they approach the world? I'll try and answer the question with minimal spoilers, of course. Essentially, I'll start with the Rune Master. The Rune Master is essentially the sort of other kind of path of arcane magic compared to like sorcery. Sorcery, when the sorcerers are all about opening that spigot of power, shaping it into a giant meteor and dropping on people's heads. It's very about letting go of those restraints and unleashing power and directing it in the proper way, whereas Rune Masters are much more about shaping that magic and controlling it. It can be said that like the elder mages in Welryn and other places with these kind of more structured hierarchical systems of mages would tend to be Rune Masters more often than they would tend to be sorcerers. And hitting on the Warlock is another sort of kind of division on like philosophies on that kind of art. Like with the Necromancer is about manipulating like physical, death in the shape of like, commanding these minions. The Lich is about commanding yourself by, being able to, become like, the Reaper form and other sort of like, affecting yourself kind of mentality, whereas the Warlock is about manipulating the soul and wielding curses. So you got Lich as manipulating the self, Necromancer as manipulating the physicality of others, and the Warlock as manipulating the souls of others. And then you get to the Falconer. The Falconer has a falcon. And they use that falcon and oh no!
Yeah, I died.
Mike died.
I was even looking at the side of the fight. I'm like, my necrotic resistance is really low. I pointed it out to myself. I'm like, this is gonna be bad. Should I do something about it? Nah, I'll be fine. I was not fine. I'm gonna try and do something about it. Do I have any necrotic res? I'm gonna pull some of these out because I don't need cold in there.
Before, just to finish my point on the Falconer, the Falconer is, again, it comes down to these sort of different styles. You have the Blade Master or Blade Dancer, which is, very in your face about, flowing with battle and only being, hit when you want to be hit and kind of controlling, the battle in that way. The Marksman is about, being, in the back, doing these kind of cool bow shots, where the Falconer is sort of, it's about having this falcon as your companion in battle and using it to kind of lure your victims into traps and trick them up, and it's more of a tricky sort of take on the rogue, which is already a pretty tricky class. And okay, let me look for another question. Okay, we got one from Killer Heart 12345. Are there any plans for new endgame content before 1.0 release? I know the old roadmap stated this, but just wanted to know if this is something being designed or implemented now. Thank you guys, and thank you for the streams. Mike, you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, there's always more stuff that's coming out. We don't have any plans for a, I would say like a major set, like content set piece. If that makes any sense before 1.0. So when I say that, I mean like we're not going to implement alternate monolith 2. Like if that makes any sense, there's not going to be a second or third major mechanical environment to build things in pre 1.0. So we're going to continue to expand the monolith and the dungeons and other systems that work in between those things and work in other places, or in the arena, sorry. So the arena, the dungeons, and the monolith will be the 3 primary places you go for endgame content at 1.0, but there will be other mechanical systems that work there. I hope that makes sense.
Made sense to me. Next question from Jazir. Why does the Summons Brigand not use the Entangled Roots Overgrown Garden node when it uses the Creeping Roots node?
No,
I rightly do not know. Mike.
No idea, sorry.
We will look into it. We will solve this mystery.
You can, if you really want it looked into, post on the forums or Discord. That's not something I can really look into right now, sorry.
Don't let us forget. Make sure to make that post so it doesn't get lost.
Yeah.
All right, we got another one from IO Weird. Are you saying
there's an R in there?
Oh god,
A-I-R, right?
Oh god, there is an R in there.
I struggle with that one so much too. When you would say this whole time, I'm like, no, there's definitely an R in there. I would
Arrow.
Yeah, arrow weird.
Weird.
Yeah, that's what I was
Arrow
saying.
weird. Arrow weird. Alright. Are you saying Tempest Strike is a slight copy of Stormstrike? If so, can its rework be more lightning focused? Sharma currently seems very physical cold focused and has some trouble with controlling lightning.
We've got some plans for changes to Tempest Strike. Yeah. Vague foreshadowing. I agree that it shines more in the cold physical than the lightning right now. And we do want to make it more similar across the board of the three, or being able to focus it on more narrowly if you really want to as well.
As a big fan of Stormstrike from the old days and just the crash sound it does, I'm excited.
Yeah, it's yeah. I don't know what I can say. Sam showed us a pretty sweet out of the blue just experiment he had, and everyone's just like, well, I guess we're changing Tempest Strike to that now. So we'll see what happens with it.
All right. Looking for some more questions. We got a first-time chat from Spoiler Alert. Can you explain the flavor text for Ravenous Void? If the brothers were lost in the Ravenous Void, why did they take its name? Rather than saying they were lost in the Void, and then they became the Ravenous Void after being found.
Glad you're here.
Trying to think back about that item and the kind of thought that went behind its inspiration.
That was a supporter unique.
Yes.
We probably find the chat.
Yeah, I'll get back to you on that one. I'm actually gonna look up the text itself real quick just to remind me of the exact wording of it. One moment.
Oh, an LP Dreamthorn, nice.
Okay, here we go. So I would say the name itself is less something that they gave themselves and more what people describe the gloves as. So the exact text of Ravenous Void is a pair of mimic brothers lost in the Ravenous Void, hungry for anyone who dips their hands inside. The name of the gloves, Ravenous Void, that's not what they call themselves, that's more so what someone would call it from kind of the outside perspective. As these mimic brothers are more kind of hungering and care less about naming things. So I would say the name is more descriptive than self-titled. And fun fact, part of the inspiration of that theming comes from kind of playing with the idea how can we get a mimic into the game in a way that feels good and makes sense, and we kind of went beat around the bush a whole bunch playing with that idea, and that kind of became the inspiration for some of this theme. And I believe it's also a supporting unique as well, so I definitely remember us iterating on this quite a bit back when it was first introduced. Let's see here. Let me scroll down and find our next one. From Quiet For Me, most important lore question. Oh, I'm excited. Why in Majelka does the vendor offer fruit, but no other vendors offer it? What is special about his fruit? What's special about his fruit is the fact that it looks so shriveled and unhealthy, and want to use this moment to kind of call out that, hey, in the Imperial era, normal produce is suffering and things are kind of on a bad on a bad route as far as sustainability, even in something as simple as fruit from a vendor. And it's pretty much lore wise, it's kind of a implied kind of sustenance that you could buy from any other kind of shopkeeping place. We don't call it out that you're able to buy food and water at a place or it's like going to the bathroom in a movie. You don't see a character, take a bathroom break because that's not important to the plot, and that's kind of why the fruit vendor in Imperial Majalka has this kind of fruit option, whereas other places don't, is because it's trying to call attention to the idea that like the produce in this time is less nutritious and less healthy than in a more like healthy era like the Divine era. Kind of shine light on the state of the Imperial era. Though, like now that I think about that, that does kind of I do want to add more instances like that where like a vendor has like an alternate dialogue that kind of is there for flavor, that kind of gives you more of a look of the situation, kind of like that. There's something similar in Sorthka in Chapter 9, where I believe the vendor there as well has some text that kind of talks a little bit about their relationship with Sapphire and Nagasa in the town. So, yeah, probably longer of an answer than I needed to give on the fruit, but I like answering it.
It's the important stuff, man. Fruit.
Delicious, man. I had fresh pineapple for the first time in like years, like the other day. So good, so good. Tasty stuff. All right, Saturnaris. Just want to say I love the Aeonicer reference in Act 9. I do as well. It's a fun one. Ah, good job, Mike. You got him.
Nailed it. I can finally fix my resistances that are just awful.
Which one are you gonna pick?
All res.
Nice.
Does it still hurt?
Right.
Yes, that still hurts.
I thought we had it set to where that like turns off after he dies.
Apparently we didn't. That might be a current patch, like internal.
Gotcha. Yeah. I thought we fixed that. Oh, huh. Strange. Anywho, down to Moradrim. What are the plans to improve and expand monoliths? Killing enemies feels extremely unrewarding because of the objective-based system. Mike, can I toss that to you?
Yes. So there's a few, like, we got that feedback quite a bit long time ago. We added the scaling chests that scale with more rewards based on the things you kill. Still got that feedback. We added the increased stability gain from killing enemies. We're still getting that feedback. I think the way we've been going about it isn't quite ideal. It's definitely helped, I think, quite a bit, but it's not the solution yet. And part of the reason we knew this would kind of happen, part of the reason we've been approaching it this way was due to the time investment required to make it work this way, being a little bit less than the probably best solution, which is probably looking more at a way to have reasons to explore and things to do that can be infrequent events, so random events that can spawn. A really good example of this is just you're going through a map in PoE, and there's like a map device is there, and you go into a map device, and a map device, you gotta go deeper, right? Or just like a secret door opens up and there's a little mini dungeon there, and there's just these things you can find that are out and about, and having more of those style of events be possible gives a point to have more exploration happen inside of a monolith, which I think is more important than just straight up need to kill more things. One of the there's so many rants of me talking about this basically once a stream I do it, so I might as well keep going. Real quick version. PoE, you get a map device, you there's that intrinsic cost of going inside, so there's that need to get as much as you can out of it because the maps themselves are quite valuable, especially a really well rolled one that you may have created over a period of time. So you have this incentive to kill as many things as possible just built into the system naturally, but because you can retry monolith echoes on the fly without a key to get into each one of them, that onus isn't there on you to get your full value out of it, because the full value comes from primarily the echo reward. Now, a suggestion I saw recently was, okay, get rid of the echo reward and just put increased chance to find those things from the monsters. Yeah, we had things like that. It definitely slows down the pace of the monolith itself. Like, yeah, things drop in the monolith, but we really wanted to put the primary reward stem at the end, so that you can, if you want to, you're not spending a lot of time backtracking. And that's one of the major problems that we're seeing with feedback from the dungeon randomization system, is the backtracking quantity is something that we're trying to avoid as much as possible. There's a longer version of that out there somewhere, but that's all I'm going to say on it right now.
Okay, so we are about 11 minutes from the top of the hour, so I'm going to try and lightning round some of these
Oh, I love it.
to kind of catch up. Okay. Ooh. So next question from Herc Delgado. Is there an afterlife in the LE universe? So some believe there is, some different cultures in Eterra have different thoughts on this. A lot of them tie back into Eterra herself, but as far as like hard evidence of it, there is no hard evidence of an afterlife in the Eterra setting as far as any like mortals know. And in the case of undeath, anyone who is raised into undeath or brought back to life, they don't have any memories of the time between the original death and when they're resurrected. So it's a big question mark there. But certain cultures have like different cultures have different beliefs on that in the setting. From Saturnaeus, what are the giant humanoid figures on the Void World map? Those are essentially gigantic void creatures that are kind of the last remnants of the void out in the far kind of reaches of completely void-dominated area that are kind of their last kind of expressions of will before settling into kind of the featureless morass of darkness that is a completely void-dominated area. For example, yeah, that is, if you actually see in that example on the screen, that looks very similar to one of the void enemies you can find in Last Refuge. But yeah, these are some of the kind of like final expressions of will and movement before it kind of settles into the kind of, black nothingness of Void's end state. From TLO Games. In the future, a year post-release, when the game stands among the great ARPGs, you'll inevitably all ask yourselves, when Lambo? And everyone that built this up to release gets that Lambo. However, today I ask the ever-present and I'm sure nagging, when multiplayer? It'll be done when it's done, and it's soon TM, and we're so excited to get it to everybody. From Mortarim. To follow up with another question, progression is focused on the class. Are there any plans for a second progression path similar to Devotions in Grim Dawn? Something that's the same for all classes and adds build depth, that would be great. Thoughts, Mike?
We've got a few tentative ideas floating around that might make their way into the game sooner rather than later, but nothing finalized that we can share yet.
Mm-hmm. Got another one from Arrowweird. Outside, it's 31 degrees Celsius here. I can sympathize. I live in a part of the U.S. where it was 112 last week, so stay cool and hydrated, everybody. Okay, scrolling down. One directly to me from Mr. Rhymer Arts. Hello, Rhymer. But if it consumes everything and destroys reality, the void, I presume, doesn't that mean the void would then itself die if it no longer has fuel and things to consume? Or is it like the heat death of the universe where it just wants everything to be one and the same so everything is still? Does it ultimately want perfect stillness and peace so it can slumber forever? I super don't know, but thought the wants to destroy existence was interesting. That is essentially the case. Essentially, when the void is unleashed onto a timeline, the intent is to erase that timeline. And the shape that erasure takes is the sort of all-consuming homogeny. So the ultimate goal of the void is to essentially itself no longer exist because it has consumed everything and made everything into nothingness. Though Orbis himself might have a bit more will and personal intention, at least in the vein of ensuring that he himself can exist. But yeah, ultimately, yeah, the void itself would cease to exist because then everything would be void. So that is sort of ties into the ultimate goal of the void. Another one from Moradrim. Another question. Are there any plans to expand the current passive trees with more choices, more columns, and rows? It currently feels like you can pick most of all you want on a build by level 80 to 90, which limits the drive to push characters. Thoughts, Mike?
I think that's happening more so in the 3 classes that don't have a 3rd mastery yet. But yeah, there is actually room in the layout for an extra row at the top. Up here, there's space for another row to sit there. There's actually space for 2 more rows to sit up here. The whole thing shifts up slightly, and you get or down slightly, and you get 2 more at the top. And like there's room for more if we wanted to, and we're still considering it. It's still growing. More of these style breakpoint nodes, or that we call them. We call them something else. More nodes like this, I think, will add a lot to that, where you'll get specific threshold nodes. You get specific thresholds that are really useful, and you'll go for those. But yeah, not having that Falconer here really does make that happen in Rogue, for example. I think more exacerbated than other ones possible. But yeah, there's more coming. There's always more coming.
All right, next one from Bush Yeti 10. If you could make a whole new class, what would it be with subclasses too? Okay, my answer is Monk, with Mastery 1 being punches, Mastery 2 being kicks, and Mastery 3 being headbutts. Mike, yours.
I'm not going to say it because I think mine might happen.
Good answer. Good answer. Just leave them wanting more. That little tease. I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
I love punch, kick, headbutt, though. That's great. I've never heard you say that before.
All right. Next one. Error weird. Pronunciation is close enough. I'll take it. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Nailed it.
Another one from Mortarim. What are the current plans for idols? The unique ones added something powerful and interesting to the game, but most classes have just stat increase attached to them. Others have very outdated designs like the shaman ones. I think there's another Mike one, though I will say, I think when we introduce Singularity, I think they kind of open up a little bit of the floodgates for like more like unique idols of a similar vein. Would that be correct?
Yeah, I don't think we'll see a huge number of idols right away. Like, I don't think we'll see like 50 unique idols at launch or anything like that. I think that would be an excessive number to see. But I do think we'll see more, and there are some classes that utilize it a lot better than others still, and it's another one of those things, like, we'll just keep adding affixes to it. We try and have a couple affixes, or at least one affix per skill that is relevant in the class-specific ones. It doesn't always line up. Sometimes you're just there with stat ones. And I think that's actually good that some classes are, like some builds in some classes are using some more generic ones primarily. It's just so it's less of it's more diversity in the what you're selecting there from build to build, and yeah, it's just one of those things. It'll continue to evolve as we go.
Alrighty, good answer. Got another one from Mortar Rim. Are there plans to expand the rune and glyph pool even further? The rare ones are very exciting to find and use. I would love to see even more. I think that's a pretty like uncontroversial. Yes, we'd love to add more of those as time goes on, correct?
Yeah, that's a lot of health on a pair of boots. Yeah.
Nice.
We'll be adding more runes, more glyphs. It's really hard to make them and not cause problems. Oh my god, it's hard to make them and not cause problems. We came up with well over 100 ideas for them, and these are all of the ones that made it through mechanically as being like, okay. This is out of well over 100. These are the ones that were like, all right, we can do this without breaking stuff. Yeah.
Got another good answer. Got another one from Mr. Catchy. Is there any secret in the game that we haven't discovered? I mean, if there is, I probably haven't found it.
Rick likes to hide things. I have no idea if there's any that are available right now that no one's found. I know that there has been things that, like, a little while ago there was something, it was over a year ago now, I think someone found something and posted it on Reddit, and everyone's like, oh my god, no one knew about this, and someone else was like, I knew about that for a long time. So, like, chances of no one having found them, whatever it is, if there is one, is pretty low. Whether or not it's, like, common knowledge, I don't know.
Has anyone gotten the Grohl milk potion drop yet?
Yes, that's one that was for a long time as no one really knew what it was, and so I think that might be what I was thinking of, where someone was like, "Oh my god, I found it," and someone was like, "I've seen that before."
Good.
Yeah. If anyone doesn't know, every once in a while you can see a beer drop instead of a potion, and then the same rate that beer drops compared to potions, Grohl milk drops compared to beer. Which is, they're all exactly the same thing. They just have a different name on screen instead of potion. It says Grohl milk or beer. Yeah.
Gromlek is such a gross. Anyways, gotta. I think I was the one who pitched it way back when. Anyways, next question is from Infantismal. Will we ever go to the Temple of Eterra when it was floating in the Ancient Era? Do we know why it crashed? No comment, but there are some story chapters that we will be releasing in the future, and we currently haven't gone into the Ancient Era much in the current campaign, so not gonna say definitively, but there are some campaign chapters that are still in the wings. All right, another question from Lone Star McFluffin. The blood pools in the boss fight can't actually kill you. They take a % of remaining health.
Oh, nice.
Thank you.
Sweet. Is that how far behind we are right now? My goodness.
Oh, yeah, I thought we were closer to the bottom of the chat list than we are.
The scroll doesn't show you how far down you are until you scroll all the way to the bottom.
Oh my god, we must be super behind then.
You know, we're actually at time right now. So, you know, if there's want for more of these lore question tag team streams, which I assume there is, and you're interested in coming back, I'd love to have you back on. And we can pick up with another style of this. But if you have anything you'd like to say on the way out, we're just gonna wrap it up now. You don't have to say anything if you don't want to. I don't put you on the spot.
Yeah, I'm definitely down for doing more of these. I do, if we have time, I do want to hit the rapid fire quiet for me ones that I just saw that he puts like four in a row.
Okay, go for it.
And there's actually, yeah, okay, so whose voice do we hear in the Temple of Eterra spoken in the Ruined Era? The character. That is very similar to the situation of the Shades of Orbis, in that it is a similar kind of reflection, but it's a sort of memory of a previous kind of point in Orbis's personal kind of timeline. So it's a similar situation to the Shades, but more specific to that location and the events that happened there. Another one from, I'll go ahead and do Dank Labs because it's right in between. In the passive tree for the rogue, there are threshold nodes that give you a bonus if you put so many points in a certain nodes. I thought it was mentioned that this is going to be added to other classes. There'll be some power creep. We'll keep an eye on the balance of things, of course. If it has a risk of power creep, we'll tweak some knobs elsewhere to kind of keep it in line. I think that's probably the most diplomatic answer there. Next one from Quiet for Me. Will we see an alternate timeline where a mage character was also corrupted on the Council of Elders? So, to clarify, the corrupted elders you see in-game are both from the Ruined Era, from Last Refuge specifically, Panion and Gaspar, whereas the player mage is from Wellrun and Divine Era, so not really the same group. But if we were to see an alternate timeline of the mage character, probably the best places we would go to for that would be either a Monolith timeline or potentially more likely one of the Champion's Gate bosses, if we were to delve into that in the future. Next one, Quiet for Me, is the mage and female statues in the Temple of Terra human interpretations of Eterra and Orbis close. The female one is Eterra, but the male one is the Observer. And last one from Quiet for Me. Last question. Will Minimus and Maximus ever reunite in the End of Time? We do want to do some updates to the End of Time, especially since we moved the arena entrance from there to Champion's Gate. It's at this point, one of our earliest zones now. So whenever we do an update to End of Time, we might do something there. I will definitely keep it in the back of my mind because I do love those doggos. And one last one, just because I feel like it. Random Name X, when answering lore questions, how often are you tempted to just say a wizard did it? Sometimes, but it's more fun to just, get that answer, to just make that answer happen. And okay,
is that it? We good?
I believe so. If I'm gonna not scroll because I'll be tempted to continue if I scroll.
All right. Well, it sounds like we've got lots more questions on on people's minds. So if we can get another one of these together, we'll talk about it and possibly come back with another one. I'll let you guys know next week if we're gonna do any more of these in the future. When that will be. I did toss up another spoiler while you were going there. That was the Necrotic version of the new Wandering Spirits VFX ability there. So I hope everyone had a great time. I know I did. We'll see you next time. Had a ton of fun.
Yeah, this is a good time.
Yep. And if you have any more questions that we didn't answer, please feel free to head on over to Discord, our forums, Reddit. There's lots of places you'll see us. Lots of friendly people in the community. You can ask for lots of questions as well. And I hope everyone comes. We'll be here same place, same time next week. For more questions and stream and stuff. We'll have a new build in action next week.